Hello, I'm Françoise Lamotte. I'm based in Switzerland.
Hi, and this is Dominik Mugli in the San Francisco Bay Area. Our podcast, The Digital Edge, brings our perspectives on the digital revolution with a cutting edge angle. Our topic today: how do we build a data driven culture? Francois, what do you think are some of the key considerations for an organization to become more data driven?
Yeah, I think it's a very important topic. And maybe just before talking about data driven, we spent the past 20 years trying to build a digital culture. And I think the digital culture was really about the tools, how to be comfortable with new tools and new technology. And I think that for data driven, it's not so much about the tools and how to use software and being able to, use latest technology. It's more about a leadership and a management mindset. I feel that there is a lot of data, and with all the technology we have now and AI, we can derive a lot of insights from the data. And I think, building a data-driven culture is probably an even bigger challenge. Because I think, we've always considered that leaders have, the intuition, they have the experience, and they can, take decisions on a hunch or on, their own feeling and gut feeling and whatever. Which sometimes is right and sometimes doesn't work out so well. So when we talk about having a data-driven culture, it means that for any decision that is being made in an organization, we rely on the data, we trust the data, and we put in a way the data first. So I think for me, building a data-driven culture means that there is a clear leadership change to say, first I'm going to consider the data, and maybe in a second step, I will, add my own experience and intuition. I mean, that's how I see it. I don't know if what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a really fascinating viewpoint, right? Because sometimes I think when I hear people talk about data driven, right, they forget about the experience and intuition aspect, as you say, right? And I was kind of like in thinking about this topic for today. I thought of an example, right, which is kind of relatable, hopefully. Maintaining equipment. Let's say if you have a car and some of the equipment on it that you need to replace once in a while are tires.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you say, hey, I'm going to replace my tires every 20,000 miles, that's one choice because the manufacturer says, okay, we see these tires perhaps last for 20,000 miles, and then you stick to that schedule, right? So the data that's being used to make that determination has been done across maybe a large data set or some internal testing by the manufacturer, and then you rely on that data. But the other perspective, right? If you look at it and say, the tires may not last as long as the manufacturer said. If I drive really fast and make hard turns and accelerate really fast, maybe after 10,000 miles, I need new tires already, right? And so this is, I think, in many environments, right, measuring what's happening and making decisions based on actual data, right? In some cases, real time data to be able to make, in this case, a safety decision, I think is very important, right? And it really comes with the wherewithal of incorporating data into the decision making. And I would agree, right? When you say like, hey, there needs to be like a leadership commitment to support this, is really the first step, I think, right? That then people all around an organization can buy into that and start thinking like, hey, am I making decisions based on I don't know, because we've always done it that way, or because I can back up and say, hey, we have this data and now we need to make a change, or we need to take action based on what is happening in the real world.
I like your example because, it really shows that maybe a few years back we had one piece of data or very limited data, and then there was a lot of margin for leaders to make decision on other factors that were not so much factual or so much grounded in tangible proofs. But now that we have so much data, I mean, your example of the car, you could effectively add, the way you drive. You could measure, the usage of the tires. I mean, there are other data that you could add to the mileage. And
Right.
based on that, you have a much better and much more complete picture. So I think that's, the point where, leaders need to be open to having more data, and in a way, maybe decreasing their the share or the value of their experience in making decisions. But I also was thinking of, an environment where I worked some time ago, and the challenge was that there was little data and there was more and more data, and still, there was no evolution in the management, still taking decisions that were contradictory with the data that was there. So, and even though the company said, we want to be data driven, just, surfacing the data and making the data available doesn't mean you are data driven. You need really to review your processes and agree on what basis decisions are going to be made. And if the data says no, then, should be no, not I ignore it and I continue in the same way, for
It,
example.
it's a data point in the decision making. Yeah, that's a fascinating observation, right? Because I think there's like this maturity uh, evolution, right, from the point of like, hey, I'm making decisions out of my gut feel because I don't have the data, and then you have the data, and you're not comfortable yet by trust the data, right? Before you can then, maybe just let go and let the data be by itself, because there's still some interpretation, right, and understanding and context of the data, right? So I think there's still a human element, even if we have the data available and it seems to show us what it is, right? It still needs some level of interpretation, I think, to understand it properly.
Yeah. And I think also that for an organization to be data driven, it also means to go beyond your own boundaries. It means going after data that is available elsewhere, could be competition, could be external data to help you, add more intelligence in what you have. Because sometimes, the proprietary data of the organization is lacking, is not perfect, might be not 100% accurate. So I think it requires a certain effort and openness to say, okay, we have, this is what we have, but we are going to take decision on data that is broader, and we are going to go and look for additional data to make sure that our decisions are more robust. So I
Yeah.
think being a data-driven culture also means that, you are open to getting information from outside, which, might not have been the case before.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, right? Because I think it stretches back again to leadership, because there you almost have to specify up front about what type of data that you're going after, because oftentimes it comes with an investment, right? You mentioned technology tools, and some of that is required, right, to be able to capture data, to analyze data, and it's oftentimes prohibitive to get everything at once, right? And I think there's a little bit of prioritization required and focus to start building out even the technical capabilities, where data can be provided and the organization can practice and learn and experiment, and then also grow, right? As it becomes more familiar with the data set, with using the data, utilizing tools, and then slowly transitioning into trusting the data and let it speak for itself as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Probably, you need to start small and you need to have a path according to, what is your priority. For example, if you have challenges in the sales area, that may be where you will start aggregating data, even from, the market, external providers, to build a very robust data set and start making decisions based on that. In other contexts, you might need, to dive into more the financial aspects, and maybe that's where you start. So I think, becoming data driven is a process, and probably, focus, start small, make the case, demonstrate the value, and then expand to other areas.
Yeah, very, very well said, in terms of a sequence of events of what that could look like for an organization.
So maybe, my takeaway or as a conclusion, I think, building a data-driven culture, like any type of culture that, one wants to build, is really related to the leadership of the organization. If you want to be innovative, if you want to be digital, if you want to be data-driven, it starts with, how much the leadership wants to support that that culture and all the aspects of it. That's obvious. And I think for me, the attitudes or the behaviors that are required for being a data-driven culture is probably, openness in terms of, getting as much data as possible, including from outside, but also, I would say, humbleness from the leaders to accept that, data is going to come as the number one criteria for decision making versus what they used to do in the past, which is, my intuition and my experience. So it's yeah, I think those two aspects of the culture are very very important.
Mm-hmm.
What are your
Yeah.
takeaways, Dominic?
Yeah, I see it as also as an evolutionary approach, right? And I think there's a bidirectional collaboration needed, right? On the one hand, as you said, leadership is extremely important to start demanding that some of the work that is being done is based on data, not solely on intuition or the way we've always done it, right? But then also start through experimentation and learning to build up experience within the organization, right? And get that feedback from the organization that any adjustments can be made, because again, investment will be required, be it in technology, be it in personnel, and evolve that over time. So I think, again, an evolutionary approach, right? Get it visible, get it supported by personnel, by the staff, and evolve that, show good examples, and continue to build on that.
Thank you so much, Dominic. Next time we will be talking about the evolving roles and leadership for digital transformation. So see you soon.
Thanks everyone for watching. See you then.